Right, so Britain loves to play the part of the sober mediator, wagging its finger at rogue states whilst insisting on the sanctity of law and diplomacy. Yet on the night Israel turned Doha into a target range, that mask slipped. As Hamas negotiators dodged missiles in the Qatari capital, an RAF Voyager tanker was caught circling overhead. And Keir Starmer, the man who cannot open his mouth without promising a ceasefire, has got some explaining to do. But rather than send Israel's president, who touched down on British soil yesterday, packing, he's rolling out the red carpet for a meeting tonight with him still. That handshake on Downing Street that will come will say it all, therefore. Britain, far from restraining Israel, may have been busy refueling its jets during that attack. For all his lawyerly talks of peace, Starmer now looks less like a statesman and more like Israel's accomplice caught mid-air with the hose. And if he goes ahead with tonight's meeting in light of that Qatari attack, as I'm sure he will, it will confirm it in the minds of an awful lot of people. Right, so as we know, yesterday in an absolutely inexcusable escalation, Israeli jets struck Doha, the capital of Qatar, in an attempt to assassinate Hamas negotiators during ongoing fragile ceasefire talks. 6 people were killed, including a Qatari security officer, while Hamas's political leadership narrowly survived. The symbolism of such an act is pretty nailed on. This was not a battlefield strike at all. It was a missile aimed at diplomacy. At the heart of ceasefire talks, a declaration that no negotiation and no sovereign capital was beyond Israel's reach. When things are going wrong for Israel, they will happily strike their neighbours because the US will always cover for them. The global response confirmed the magnitude of the crime, though. Qatar condemned it as a blatant violation of sovereignty, as you can imagine they would. Russia called it a gross violation of the UN Charter. Even the US, who are normally Israel's protectors, denounced it as counterproductive. Well, that's about as strong a language as you're going to get, with Trump denying personally any knowledge, in fact, despite White House officials confirming that Israel had very much informed them beforehand. Yet the shock did not end there. Independent media soon uncovered flight tracking data showing a Royal Air Force Voyager refueling tanker circling over Doha at the exact time of the Israeli strike. Voyagers are not passenger planes or idle observers. They are airborne fuel stations for fighter jets. They circle for one reason only, to extend the reach of warplanes. If not for Israel, then who were they serving at that precise point in time and just happened to be there over Doha? Downing Street rushed to deny prior knowledge of the attack, though. Keir Starmer condemned the bombing as an assault on sovereignty, but the denial rings hollow. It sidesteps that central question. Why was a British tanker orbiting Doha's skies as Israeli bombs fell? Unless the government can provide an alternative explanation, Britain stands accused not of ignorance, but of complicity here. And yet tonight, astonishingly, Starmer is due to welcome Israeli President Isaac Herzog into Downing Street, he who touched down here in the UK the same day as this attack. Palestinian campaigners have already demanded Herzog's arrest for war crimes. Instead, he is still to be received with ceremony. A handshake outside number 10 will become a defining image. Britain shaking hands with the man whose government had just struck a neutral capital during peace talks while its own tanker circled above. If this meeting goes ahead tonight, as I've no doubt it will, people will not call it diplomacy. Many will be calling it collusion instead. The Israeli strike on Doha was shocking not only for its violence, but for its deliberate timing. Hamas's political leaders were in Qatar to negotiate a ceasefire. Israel's decision to target them on Qatari soil was therefore a direct attempt to sabotage the process. This was blatant. The message was brutal. Even diplomacy will be annihilated if it threatens Israel's military objectives. They do not want to stop. They do not want peace. They want ethnic cleansing and genocide and don't want anybody to stand in their way. AP News reported that Hamas's leadership survived, but 6 people, including that Qatari officer, were killed. This was an unprecedented assault on the very notion of negotiation. By hitting a neutral mediator state, Israel humiliated Qatar and declared that no safe space for dialogue exists where Palestine is concerned. The world reacted with quite understandable outrage. The condemnation was united across capitals, but words alone cannot erase the reality here. A neutral state had been bombed in the middle of peace talks. So in this context, the sight of a British military tanker circling overhead becomes explosive in itself. If Britain's Voyager was assisting Israeli jets, then the UK did not just look away whilst Israel wrecked diplomacy, it helped refuel the planes that destroyed it. The Voyager is one of the RAF's most important assets. It is not a fighter or a bomber. It is a refuelling station in the sky, extending the reach of combat aircraft. Its role is unmistakable. When a Voyager circles, it is not lost, it is not idling, it is waiting for jets to plug into its hoses. The RAF does not put aircraft in the air at British public expense to do nothing, after all. Open source flight trackers, of which there are many online, captured one such Voyager circling over Doha. Independent outlets, including Squawk Box, now writing in the Canary, published the data. The pattern was not a straight transit corridor, but a classic loiter orbit. The evidence would appear to be cut and dried on the face of things. Britain's tanker was airborne above Doha as Israeli missiles struck. Who then was it serving? Qatar had no jets in the air at the time. The United States has its own fleet of KC-135 and KC-46 tankers. The idea that the Voyager was simply transiting does not withstand scrutiny, given its looping flight pattern. Voyagers do not waste expensive flight hours burning fuel flying in circles. They orbit for a reason. That leaves only one answer as things stand. It was there for Israel's jets. And if so, if proven, Britain was not neutral here, was not unknowing. It was a direct enabler of an illegal strike against a neutral capital. Downing Street's denial collapses under the weight of this evidence, it would appear. It insists Britain had no prior knowledge, but the issue is not knowledge, it is presence. A tanker was there. Its role is refueling. Even if that wasn't what they were doing, they could see what was happening. Without a credible alternative explanation, Britain really does look caught red-handed here. And this is why the Voyager matters. It is less a smoking gun, more the smoking contrail in the sky. And if it goes unanswered, it exposes Britain's mask of neutrality as a lie. Keir Starmer's response was immediate, but oh so predictable. He condemned the strike on Qatar, described it as a violation of sovereignty, and reaffirmed Britain's support for humanitarian relief. He denied Britain had prior knowledge. But this was more than just a denial. It was the latest entry in a long record of evasions. Starmer has built a reputation for dishonesty, not all manner of things, not just on Gaza. He denied famine even as aid groups testified to children starving. He defended Israel's right to defend itself even as its campaign crossed into genocide. He said Israel had the right to cut off water and fuel to Gaza, as we all remember. He shifted positions on the International Criminal Court, praising it one week and hedging the next. His word is worthless. So his denial over Doha collapses under its own weight and under Starmer's own reputation for having a loose relationship with the truth. It is not simply that he lacks credibility, it is that the evidence directly contradicts him. The Voyager's orbit is a physical fact. We've seen it on our screens. His insistence on ignorance sounds less like truth and more like another rehearsed escape line. His credibility implodes when set against that plane's flight path. The scandal all gets compounded by Herzog's visit, his very presence in this country right now. Israel's president, though a largely ceremonial figure, represents the state abroad. Herzog has been the diplomatic frontman for Israel's war, softening the image of a campaign that has devastated Gaza, allowing for UK media muppets like Ed Balls, for example, to say he isn't on the same page as the likes of Benjamin Netanyahu, as he did this morning on GMB, that he'd be appalled by this, even after Herzog claimed there are no innocents in Gaza, of course, and was famously photographed signing warheads to be fired into Palestine. Balls being married to the now Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper just makes even more of a mockery of the entire show, of course, each and every time he appears. He's not a neutral voice. Yesterday, Herzog arrived in London. This evening, Keir Starmer is due to welcome him into Downing Street. Palestinian activists are outraged. Middle East Eye has reported that campaigners have submitted formal requests for Herzog's arrest on suspicion of war crimes, citing Britain's obligations under international law to act on such requests. Starmer will ignore those requests. Yet Herzog has not been detained, and that's why. Instead, he is being feted. The timing is really damning, though. Britain's tanker had just been caught in Doha's skies as Israel struck. The ink on Starmer's denial was barely dry, yet he will still choose to shake Herzog's hand on the steps of number 10 tonight. The image will be indelible. Britain not distancing itself from Israel's crime, but embracing it. This is why Herzog's visit matters even more now. It transforms suspicion into complicity. If the Voyager raised the question of operational support, the handshake with Herzog will answer it symbolically. Britain will not merely be turning a blind eye, it will be publicly standing with Israel in the aftermath of a crime. Keir Starmer has repeatedly claimed that Britain is committed to securing a ceasefire in Gaza. He has spoken of the urgent need to end hostilities, to provide humanitarian relief, and to press all parties towards peace. These words have been designed to pacify critics within his party and to reassure a public horrified by the destruction of Gaza. But if Britain's RAF Voyager was complicit in Israel's strike on Doha, then Starmer's words collapse into ash. Far from working to secure a ceasefire, he will have knowingly acted to prevent one. The Doha strike was not aimed at military targets. It was aimed at negotiators in Qatar. These were the very people exploring a deal that could have stopped the bloodshed. By striking them, Israel sabotaged the process, as it has done so many times before in all manner of different ways. And if Britain's tanker was there to support Israel's jets, then Britain was part of that sabotage. Starmer cannot have it both ways. He cannot pose as a champion of peace whilst his government aids the destruction of peace talks. The contradiction is devastating. Answers are needed. The Prime Minister, who claims to be working for a ceasefire, is the same man whose aircraft may have extended the reach of Israeli jets to annihilate the very negotiations that could have delivered it. His lofty speeches about peace are revealed as meaningless. His denials ring hollow. His hands are not clean. The legal implications are just as severe. Under the Rome Statute, aiding and abetting war crimes is itself a crime. The International Court of Justice has already made clear that states must not assist acts that may constitute genocide. If Britain's Voyager extended the reach of Israeli jets to bomb Doha, then Britain is not only complicit but criminally exposed. This is not hypothetical either. Campaigners have already sought Herzog's arrest under Britain's obligations of universal jurisdiction. They could with equal force demand investigation into Britain's role. The case would be straightforward, wouldn't it? A British tanker loitered in Doha's skies during an illegal strike. Unless another explanation is provided, the presumption is that it assisted. Starmer may hope this disappears into a fog of denials, but law has a long memory, and so do we, don't we? Britain risks being remembered not as a neutral mediator, but as an accomplice in an inexcusable act of aggression. And the political fallout from this has already begun. Dozens of MPs have condemned Herzog's visits and demanded it be cancelled. Grassroots Labour activists, already furious at Starmer's stance over Gaza, see this as even more proof of his betrayal. His authority inside his own party is corroding rapidly. Internationally, Britain's mask as a mediator is shattered. For years it tried to pose as a bridge between the West and the Middle East. But how can it mediate when it is caught circling its own tankers above a neutral capital as Israel bombs it? Qatar will sure as hell not forget. Russia and others will seize on Britain's hypocrisy for certain. Britain's credibility is not merely frayed, it's imploded. The Voyager incident is not an isolated scandal, it's a grossly underreported one at this moment in time. The strike itself buries it, and the mainstream media fixate on that aspect of this story. But it is part of a wider pattern of complicity here. Britain continues to export weapons components to Israel. It shelters companies like Elbit Systems and awards them major government contracts. It provides diplomatic cover at the United Nations. It has looked away as Israel starves Gaza. Doha is the most visible rupture in all of this, but the pattern is long established. The difference is that the Voyager cannot be spun away as rhetoric. It is data, a track in the sky, a visible contradiction to Britain's denials. It crystallises a pattern of complicity into a single image. The mask of neutrality is gone. So the question to Keir Starmer is a very simple one. Why was an RAF Voyager circling over Doha as Israeli missiles struck? If not for Israeli jets, then for who? If not to extend their reach, then why loiter there at all? Unless Downing Street can answer this, Britain stands utterly exposed. But will our mainstream media even ask such a simple question? Keir Starmer's decision to meet Herzog compounds the exposure, though. He could have cancelled, he should cancel. He could have sent him home. He could have ordered his arrest, as campaigners have demanded. Instead, he will embrace him. The handshake is not diplomacy, it is complicity. And more damning still, if the Voyager was aiding Israel's strike on Doha, then Starmer has not simply failed to deliver a ceasefire, he will have actively obstructed one. His speeches about peace will be revealed as just performance. His denials will implode. His neutrality will shatter. Britain's role will be exposed, its mask completely torn away. The Voyager's orbit is more than a flight path. It's an indictment. It shows that Britain, for all its talk of peace, may have chosen more. Chosen it deliberately. And unless Starmer can explain this, history will not remember him as a statesman, if it barely does anyway. It will remember him as the Prime Minister who shook hands with the head of a rogue state, aiding said state by refuelling the destruction of diplomacy itself. And all of this comes hot on the heels of Starmer's outgoing Foreign Secretary David Lammy having put pen to paper and possibly provided the evidence for his own complicity. by denying genocide is even happening in Gaza nearly 2 years after we began to witness it, all despite listing all the reasons why it actually is happening at that. Get all the details of his arrogant stupidity in this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content, as well as spreading the word and helping support the channel at the same time, which is very much appreciated. Holding power to account for ordinary working class people, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.